Hello, I'm Olas Gerjuk and you're watching Head to Head with UATV. Ukraine is awaiting a new large-scale prisoner swap with Russia that would take place in the coming week. This is according to the Ukrainian Foreign Minister Vadym Prystaiko. The Kremlin did not confirm such plans, but said that preparations for the swap were underway and that they favored an all-for-all formula. To talk more about this, we welcome to our studio today Tetyana Pechonchyk, Chair of the Board at Human Rights Information Center. Hello and thank you for joining us today.
Hello.
So before we start the discussion, let's remember and remind our audience that on the 7th of September we had a long-awaited prisoner swap that took place between Ukraine and Russia on a 35 for 35 formula, so 24 Ukrainian sailors slash POWs and 11 political prisoners were freed, but that was the first prisoner swap since 2017. So now, have you expected that the arrangements of the new prisoner exchange will start this soon?
Actually, we expect that new release of the political prisoners and prisoners of war could happen after the change of power in Ukraine.
Even earlier than September, then?
It depends on the negotiations, but still we expected that this could happen, I would say, the first half year after Mr. Zelensky a new parliament started to work. So this can have some possibilities for new platforms for negotiation. And it's correct that only 11 political prisoners and 24 sailors were released. So we have now information at least about 86 political prisoners who are kept on the territory of occupied Crimea and in Russia, and plus also 227 persons that are kept that are in captivity in the non-controlled part of Donbass. So this is still a huge amount of people to be released, and we do hope that this release will happen soon.
Yes, we also hope on that. And well, so far we know that Russian President spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has confirmed that Russia is preparing for the prisoner swap with Ukraine, although there are no details so far. Do you know any details about this process?
We do not know any details as well, as we are not the part of negotiation. We are human rights organizations that work with documentation and also providing some support, help to the families and providing legal aid to the victims of this conflict. But our role here is very important because in this process of negotiation, we try to draw attention to new stories of political prisoners, because as we see from the previous release, those people that were released, they are well-known persons like Oleg Sentsov or Volodymyr Balukh. Their surnames, their stories were shared many times by national and international media.
Right, their public profile is very developed.
Yes, that is why we think that now it's very important for media, for diplomats to talk about new stories from these lists, because there are much more persons, for example, that are imprisoned for their human rights work, for their journalistic activity, for their civic activity, etc. Interesting stories. That is why we have to promote these stories.
That is why now I admire this new project launched by human rights activists and Radio Liberty, Unforgettable, that basically now they want to show the world, show the faces of these political prisoners, of these 86 political prisoners and 227 people that still remain on the occupied territories of Donbass, to the whole world. And this is indeed very important. But could you tell us maybe about some other initiatives that need to be implemented throughout Ukraine, and maybe how can we support those who still remain behind bars there? Maybe let's talk also about these private letters, how important they are.
That's true, that every person in Ukraine, not only media and journalists telling these stories, but every citizen basically can be included into this campaign. And this is very important, that people are sending letters to the political prisoners, and these letters are collected by the activists of the initiative Save Oleg Sentsov. Even after the release of Oleg, this campaign is continuing its activity, because they fight, they strive for before releasing the rest, at least 86 political prisoners more. And we also, together with this campaign and other human rights partners, we launched a big tour through different regional cities of Ukraine. We visited actually 9 cities, and in a few days we go to the 10th city, it's the city of Chernihiv, and where we also bring the relatives of political prisoners, ex-political prisoners, those people that were released, and also volunteers of Save Elections of campaign to tell about the rest of political prisoners and our requests and our demands. And for us it's very important that not only media on the international level or national media are covering these stories, but also regional press are included, and people can also demonstrate their solidarities by attending street demonstration and sending letters and postcards to political prisoners.
Plus, people can just join this venue and participate in this talk. Like you said, you visited 9 cities and now you're about to go to Chernihiv. But could you please tell us, how do you gather the public so they can participate and they can hear a story the first hand?
Yes, actually we have a big visual side of that that is also attractive for people, because in every city we install traps with demonstrating that every person on the territory of Crimea and Russian Federation could get into this trap. And there is also informational tent, and a lot of activities are happening, so people just passing the central squares of these cities, they couldn't pass by because they see this big installation, and so they can join it on the spot. But also we have a lot of media activities like TV, radio airs, press conferences, and also evening film screenings of the films about political prisoners, about Crimean Tatar movement. So this is different set of activities that is entitled to launch the big public campaign of support on the regional level.
So coming back to this topic of possible prisoner swap between Ukraine and Russia, what are the chances that it likely might be possible?
You know, it's very difficult to comment chances. We will keep our fingers crossed, and I think that it's a very sensitive issue, and public attention and media coverage is important when it comes to the general topic of release of political prisoners and covering their stories. But when it comes to the details of negotiation, I think that it should be kept in some, you know, in between those parties that are having these negotiations.
So we know that we have 86 Ukrainian political prisoners that are behind bars in Russia and occupied Crimea, plus 227 those who are kept in the occupied territories of Donbass. Whom does Russia request for these prisoner exchanges usually?
Usually they request those people that committed real crimes on the territory of Ukraine, that committed war crimes and grave human rights violations. And this is not an equal exchange, because Russia is releasing the innocent people that didn't commit any crime, but instead it requires real criminals. And of course we are in a very painful situation when we have to confirm such kind of exchange in order to release our prisoners.
But still, it's interesting that there was a deadlock in negotiations between Ukraine and Russia since 2017, and now it's interesting for me to know what exactly could prompt such a fast decision-making between Ukraine and Russia. So we could see, yes, you remember that maybe after changing powers, after Zelensky took in office and also the new parliament was established, just the second week after the parliament was established, we have a prisoner exchange, the September prisoner exchange. And now a month later, now we're talking about the other one. So do you think that it's somehow connected more to Ukraine and Russia establishing some constructive dialogue? Maybe you think that it can be connected to Steinmeier formula that is debated over in Ukraine these days? Or maybe there are some other triggers or some other reasons that this might be connected to?
We see that with new authorities, a lot of processes that were stuck with previous powers and government and parliament, they now started to move, and it is also connected to the elaboration of legislation that are connected to the conflict. We see a lot of talks about the ratification of the Rome Statute, about transitional justice, etc., etc. So we see a lot of preparatory work for that. And which we also greet, because this is something that was expected by human rights organizations from the government and from the parliament, from the president. So yes, I think that this is a complex of the reasons, but also this is the situation when both parties are tired of this conflict, and I think it's a high time to try to find a solution, because if it's not found now, the situation will be stuck one more time.
That is true. Well, thank you so much for your comments. Let's all hope that these talks between the political elites of Ukraine and Russia will result into real actions, and let's hope that our compatriots that are being held illegally behind bars in Russia and occupied Crimea and Donbass will soon be back home safe and sound. I will remind you that this was Tetyana Pechonchyk, chair of the board at Human Rights Information Center. Thank you for watching Head to Head. I'm Oles Gerjuk. Goodbye.